My name is Dianne Maclean, and I came to Little Rock. I actually moved to Yano, and I came to Little Rock, brought my two small children, and came in 1977, I think it was. In 1977, I owned a feed store in Acton, and then I bought the commercial corner on the corner of 77th and Pearblossom Highway, which included I bought a restaurant, Circle J restaurant, and also had All-Star Realty. My husband came home from Vietnam and wasn't doing so good, so he ran off to Alaska, so I turned the land contract on our house there into a purchase and stayed there for 5 years, and then they rolled through wanting to buy all of the older properties, and I had a early 20th century clapboard raised floor with a big front porch with the white columns, front porch sitting porch on an acre and a half in San Fernando Valley in Canoga Park, and I had an acre and a half and 36 horses. I was trading horses for a living. I had a couple other jobs, I worked for the DMV part-time, and I worked for, at night I waited tables. That was Canoga Park. Canoga Park, around the Winnetka wasn't really called a town then, but around Canoga Park and the Winnetka and around, that kind of area. And so when they came through and wanted to buy all the houses, then I had to find somewhere to live. I had never heard of Little Rock before, but in the search for what I wanted with all the horses, and I wanted to be out of town, and so I just kept going, spreading out, and they kept telling me there was a place up here that grew apples, and I came up, and of course Little Rock, it was peaches and pears, but so I bought a house out here, and with my two kids, and had a feed store in Acton. We had 3 feed stores. My next door neighbor and another guy and I had 3 of them. And then I got my real estate license because everybody kept bugging me. So I got my real estate license and started selling real estate. And I was still trading horses and goats and sheep and livestock of all kinds because I have 20 acres out there. So I was doing that. And then Sally Brown and I opened a real estate office together. After my neighbor died of cancer, we had Windmill Realty as where we were all working. And then Vicki Shamboli finally took that over. And so then my friend and I started a real estate office. And then when she wanted to move on, I bought the corner on 77th and Pearblossom Highway and opened All-Star Realty, which has been 40 years ago now, I guess. So Little Rock was a much quieter, much more hometown feeling kind of place. More everybody knew everybody. You knew who you could trust and who you couldn't. The thing is we had a lot less traffic. It was a state highway, but the state highway was a lot less traffic directly across from where the restaurant is. And when it was Circle J restaurant, there was a packing shed, and there's a Bones's packing shed still down next to the school, but they used to use that packing shed all the time when they would pick peaches. And Jack Bones had a crew running through there when I first bought the restaurant. And so then at the end of summer, when they'd get done, then we'd have a big barn dance. I'd take my truck and trailer and haul in a bunch of hay, and we'd put up a bunch of bales of hay and everything in there. And then Valerie and Joe from Valco, Joe would come down and play music, and we would send out flyers and stuff, and basically everybody just told everybody. And we'd have a big deal, and we didn't have much of a Chamber of Commerce, but what little we did have, that was one of the big deals for us. And we'd have a big barn dance, and he'd play for a while, and we did serve beer. So, and then everybody'd run back and forth across to the restaurant. I closed the restaurant so we could go do this. But still, everybody would run back and forth. And then we'd close down. Well, we'd start trying to close down around 10:30, 11 o'clock, but usually around midnight, we'd actually get pretty close to close down. And so for those people that actually were still there and had drank beer and everything, I'd go back and open up the restaurant. And then we would make everybody breakfast for free. So then we just, for the ones that were left behind that needed to eat before they went home. And everybody used to run back and forth across the highway because after dark, not too long after dark, you'd have one or two cars go by and there was like nothing going on the highway after about 9 o'clock in the summertime even. So it would slow down considerable. And when I first bought it, I remember that down by Danny Daniels had the Orbit, and next to the Orbit was the Wagon Wheel, the beer joint down there, and the Wagon Wheel bar, and they had a couple pool tables, and it would get rowdy from time to time. And honestly, there was a group of people that went in the Wagon Wheel, and that's just about all that went in the Wagon Wheel. And so I remember when I first got it, when I had the feed store and when I first bought the restaurant and started it, that I was driving home and my flatbed truck that I delivered hay on one night late, probably about 11, and I had the kids in the truck and we were driving through, and the guys all standing outside the Wagon Wheel. They went over to Danny Daniels and got an old cast iron stove that was an old kitchen stove, and he had a bunch of antiques and stuff out there, and they drug it out in the middle, put it across the white line on the highway just to see who they could scare up, So we come down the road. It was funny. We came down the road and I saw something out there and it didn't want to move, and it was actually one of the old cast iron with ceramic over the top of it, kitchen stove, so it was white. So I could see it, so I went out and I stopped. And I looked over, and here's all these idiots standing outside of the Wagon Wheel just laughing up a storm because they made me stop, So I got out and made my kids stay in the truck, got out and pulled that thing. But I pulled it across the road the other way, so it would be harder for them to put it back out. So I pull it over and put it in the dirt on the other side of the road, And they went, oh, we know who you are. But, they were just looking for entertainment. And they'd say, we know who you're, the girl that down at the store and down to the cafe. And, but, it wasn't any, in doing those things, you look back on them. And at the time, you looked and said, oh, those guys are a real nuisance or whatever. But you look back on it and you could see that there wasn't a lot of entertainment out here. So it was pretty funny, but it was a really different atmosphere for sure. I remember one year when we had the restaurant and it started to snow early in the morning. Fortunately, I always had a four-wheel drive truck. So we came on down and opened up the restaurant about 5:30, and it snowed all day long. And then we did pretty good. It was piling it up. So when it started turning dark, just before dark, it got all gray out and everything late in the afternoon. And just before dark, we had a good 2.5 feet out there, and it was still snowing hard. We didn't have a lot of traffic on the highway, but we did have some. And there were people getting stuck and spinning out on the side of the road. We tended to have pretty slushy snow, but we had quite a good, 3 feet of snow will stop just about anything. We kept thinking that the motor grader was going to come through or the snow blower or somebody, but, we weren't high on the list of highways to clean. So we ended up, that night, we ended up late. We ended up with a restaurant full of people, so we put our boots on and trudged up and down 77th and going both ways and asked people if we could borrow blankets and stuff and brought them all back in and then put people to sleep in the booths and handed out all the blankets and stuff so people, would have a place to go, because there was no way getting in and out. They were stuck. They could not move. So we kept the coffee going all night, and we lost electricity, but we still had natural gas. We could cook. So we started making pots full of coffee on the stove instead of the electric farmer's coffee pot. We were there all night, and it was half into the next day before they ever got a grader out and cleaned the street, and they could get tow trucks out and start getting people freed from the side of the road and stuff. But we stayed up, and people talked and sang, and had a guy had a guitar, I guess, and I don't know, played games. The kids all ran around, and fortunately the gas was on, so we had heat. So we had heat and candles and coffee, and that was about it. So that, I remember, that was a real good memory about being in Little Rock. We had a motorcycle group come through Little Rock on the highway, and they had BB guns. Fortunately, BB guns. We thought they were something else, but they drove through and were shooting the windows out of businesses as they rode down the highway. But then they went over and went into the wagon wheel as per their usual clientele. So they went into the wagon wheel, and the sheriff's posse had been up. Jack Bones and those guys up there, the sheriff's posse had been up, and posse decided they were going to do something about it. So they all saddled up and came down, and we were on horses and went down to the wagon wheel, and the guys were inside and outside drinking beer, and we told them they weren't welcome, and told them we knew what they did, and you know, and these guys had badges because they were volunteer sheriffs for going and finding lost people and all that kind of good stuff. So that kind of worried them a little bit, and so they come out and started getting on their motorcycles, and we kept going around them on horses, and pretty soon they took off, and we chased them, and we chased them out of town on horses. People took pride in the fact that they were decent and good to their neighbors, and that their neighbors would be decent and good to them. And what I want people to know about Little Rock is, I don't think anybody in the Midwest or anywhere in the East or anything, even maybe even down below in California, even thinks that there are places left like that in California. Little Rock's a place like that. If you will go and introduce yourself and make an effort to know your neighbors, you and your neighbors are all going to decide how that's going to work out. And I know around me, every summer we have a big party, and every Christmas we have a big party. Everybody comes, and everybody knows their neighbors, and you know, we all get to visit and catch up. And there isn't anybody in my neighborhood, and we got big ones. It's 20 acres, 5 acres, 2.5, big pieces, spread out far apart. There isn't anybody around there that you couldn't just go over to and ask for help that you wouldn't get it. And it's a very good feeling to know that in an emergency, if something happens, you know your neighbor's name. We make a point of making sure up where I live that everybody knows who has a generator, who has a 4-wheel drive, who has extra tanks of water, so because, no man's an island, the whole thing about what makes these places, in Little Rock in particular, what makes these places what they are is what you decide for them to be. And if you decide to make this a special place, it will be. What I would like to see is I would like to see the people that call this home treat it like their home and try to build up a family-based situation here. And I say family, meaning all of us, because family's the people you include. So try to be inclusive, make it a bigger family for everybody here. Get the things that the county offers to everybody and make sure that we have the benefits of that kind of stuff, so this feels like that it is our home and a place that we're proud of and a place we want to stay, and get them to get involved. Politics is not fun, but I'll tell you, a few more voices matters tremendously when you go in there and say, hey, remember us? So we are unincorporated LA County. I'd like to see us stay unincorporated LA County. And I'd like to see us benefit by being involved in our community. I would hope that Little Rock would never change from a small town atmosphere, an urban area doesn't fit here to be. I would hope Little Rock would remain rural, and people come out here. You know, I have people all the time come in my office, come out here, and they bought a house in Palmdale or Lancaster or somewhere, went for a Sunday drive, come into my office and go, oh my gosh, we didn't even know this place existed. Sell their houses in town and move out and buy a house on an acre or 2.5 acres or whatever, because they always wanted to have an orchard. They always wanted to have animals. They always wanted to have some chickens. They wanted a big garden. They're just a list of things that they wanted when they wanted to buy a house and have the pride of ownership, that when you're a homeowner and you can actually spend time outside doing stuff in your house, you kind of like it a little more. You don't have to leave to have a good time. It is what you make it, and I have a lot of roots here, and I like it here, and I know a ton of people here, and I like driving into the gas station and have people say hi to me. I go to the market, and yesterday I stood for an hour and talked to people in the market that I hadn't seen for several years, because you know a lot of people, and it's nice to have people when you go to the cafe and people call you by your first name and deliver a cup of coffee and say, how's your day? And if you don't know how that feels, then you need to come to a place like Little Rock. You need to come to a place where maybe not everybody knows your name, but if you hang out for a while, a whole lot of people will know your name. Little Rock has some of the best opportunities in the world, and or the best opportunities ever. And the reason that I say that is, for me, Little Rock's bigger than just this little stretch of highway or this little group of buildings, because I see Little Rock expanded out all over. And opportunity here to really put your roots down and make a nest, and that includes going out as far as Pearblossom and Llano. That includes, because everybody that you get to know here in Little Rock may live in the next town over or whatever, but they're still rural people and they live around. I have people I do business with now that are kids and grandkids of the people that I met and started doing business with. And that's my thing about opportunity. There is so much opportunity here to work for yourself. And believe me, if you're ever going to get ahead in life, you're not going to be cashing somebody else's check. If you're going to get ahead in life, it's because you're paying your own. Plus the fact that there's nothing in the world. I would rather make $500 by the seat of my pants than make $2,500 sitting in somebody's factory chair. So I realize that that's the frame of mind, but I believe that's the frame of mind of the people who live here. These people are individualists. They came out here. They want a little room. They want to be themselves. They want to be nice to their neighbors, but they would like to have their own space. And I think that's what I like about Little Rock most.